Good morning, everyone. My name is David Disshorst, and I have a desire to stop drinking today. My, uh, I was given the gift of desperation on the 29th of June, 1994. I had been desperate many times before that, but that day was the day I got desperate enough to try this way of life. Um, I belong to the Lorenzo Group, best home group in the South Plains and Panhandle. And if you don't think your home group is the best in that place, you need to find your new home group, because this home group's going to save your butt. I do have to clear up one thing. I am not the David from Margie's story this morning. I don't think so. I've had a lot of blackouts, but I don't think that's. That's a great story. I'm a big fan of the Al-Anon program. Our youngest daughter has been in Al-Anon for 22 years now, and she is very active up in Amarillo doing service work. A lot of the stuff that Margie was talking about this morning. Where it all started. I was born at Triple Army Medical Center in Pearl Harbor. I was a Navy brat most of my youth. I had two things, unique things. One is I was born with the same size head that I have today. And two, I had freckles. And they always called me Strawberry Freckle Face. And I absolutely hated that, but they always did. And it's true. I mean, you look at pictures of me when I was young, and you'd wonder how I could stand upright with that big head, just kind of leaning over. I worked for a guy when I was in the 5th grade on a farm, and he went to the store and bought me a cowboy hat for Christmas, and he bought the smallest hat they had in the store, and had to take it back, and he got the biggest hat they had in the store. So I've always been unique in that situation. But I've always felt different. I went to 6 different elementary schools by the time I was in the 5th grade. Just about the time I'd start to feel like I was fitting in or getting friends, we'd move. And there's a lot of moves in between that. My dad wasn't always living with us when he was stationed. Such as we were living with my grandma in Missouri, he was going to school out in Bainbridge, Maryland. We went to Bainbridge for the summer, but we did a lot of that back and forth. He was out to sea a lot, so I didn't really have a father figure in my life. My grandpa was very important in my life. He would come home from work, and he would sit in his chair, and my grandma would mix him a highball. And he would drink his highball before dinner, and then he would go and he'd drink milk afterwards. And I always thought, man, that's what I want to be like. I want to be able to do that when I get old enough to drink. Little did I know, he drank a little bit more than that, but that was what I knew. That's how I knew my grandpa. My grandpa taught me how to fish. My grandpa used to take me camping with him. I'd go in the summer times. I'd fly up to Missouri and spend time with my grandpa. He was my hero. But my dad retired when I was 15. The book tells us, we talk about things as they relate to alcoholism. This isn't really AA, but it does relate. Alcohol wasn't my first drug of choice. The first time I had any mind-altering substance was 12 years old. We were living in Iowa Park, Texas. Me and my brother had we had a picnic table out back, and we got a blanket, and we put that blanket over the picnic table and made us a tent. And we had a great big bag of some Mexican weed. We had some extra wide strawberry zigzags and a Playboy magazine. And That was great. I loved it. I loved smoking weed from the very first time I did it. It made that fat-headed little strawberry freckle-faced boy disappear, and I always loved that. And so I didn't get high every day, but every chance I got to, I got high. And this went on until my dad retired when I was 15. We moved back to Missouri, to their hometown, and that's the first place I felt like I fit in, because I had all my cousins there and I had friends there. We'd gone back a lot of times, like I said, while my dad was in the Navy. If he was gone to sea, or during the summer times, we'd go back and live there. And so I knew all my cousins. I knew quite a bit, had quite a few friends, and it was really the only place that I'd fit into school. And the first time that I got drunk, was on Boone's Farm Wild Mountain. And we had 2/5 of it. I was drinking it in the back of a Chevy Caprice. And that was the first night I got unlawful carnal knowledge of the opposite sex. And I thought it was great. The next time I remember getting drunk, I blacked out and tried to call in bed with my brother's girlfriend. The thing about that was, though, that when I did that, I got up the next morning. I'd gone out with friends. We were back in San Diego visiting people. My dad retired out of San Diego, and I had some friends out there. And I'd gone out with some friends when we was back there visiting my brother. My older brother stayed out there, and I don't remember coming home. I know we were drinking Michelobes, and the next morning I get up, come to, and my brother's girlfriend won't even look me in the eye. She won't even talk to me. She just, every time she just does this number to me. And my brother, he short sentences, and he doesn't ever finish things, and he's all mad at me, and I have no idea why. I don't know for the life of me why. So he lived in a little apartment upstairs above a house, and I'm sitting out on the steps going up to the house, and he comes out there and tells me what happens. And I was like, Danny, I don't remember anything. I don't know what happened. And we talked for a little bit, and that made everything okay, because I was in a blackout. And that's kind of the story of my drinking career, is that anytime I had bad behavior, it was okay because I was drunk or high. And so that, I think, kind of perpetuated my disease. Went through a lot of things. I went from a A-B student to barely passing high school. I just basically, by my senior year in high school, I turned into a garbage pail. Anything that you were going to give me to make that little strawberry freckle-faced fathead kid go away, I was going to do it. And had a lot of problems at home with my mom and dad. Of course, they didn't understand. I ran away from home when I was 19 years old. I went back to San Diego. San Diego was kind of a unique place for me. When we moved out there, I was a freshman in high school, and we moved out there because my brother was getting in a lot of trouble and my mom couldn't control him. My dad was stationed in San Diego. That's one of these things where I was telling you about. We stayed in one place, and he went to San Diego. Well, he had gotten in some trouble with the law and was getting in trouble with my mom and stuff, and so we moved out to San Diego. I had met this nun. I'm Catholic, cradle Catholic, and we had started going to this youth group in El Cajon. And I'd met this nun, and she was very, very instrumental in my life. She was there when I needed her. She was what we would expect God to be, that unconditional love. She didn't care I had a fat head. She didn't care if I was a strawberry freckle face, anything like that. And so she kind of took me in. I always felt comfortable around her. I always felt safe around her. If I was, I'd call her, when I was in trouble. Even after we moved back from San Diego, anytime that I needed somebody to talk to, she was there. And so when I had these problems with my mom, and I'd started school, and I drank my way out of school, smoked my way out of school, and I'd moved back to San Diego. Um, I mean, it was just the same thing, these geographical cures. I had 5 jobs in 6 different states one year. And I'm not talking like Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico. I'm like Missouri, Texas, Virginia, West Virginia, California. I was all over the place. And I was used to traveling because that's what I did. I still love to travel today. But, we had gotten back, and I had known my first wife. I'd met her at the youth group. And when I got back to San Diego, we had eventually, I moved in with her. We had our first daughter together. Then we got married. I know that's a little backwards, but and life was going on. It was okay. We were making it. Still drugging and drinking. Wasn't getting in any trouble though. Or if I had gotten in any behavioral problems, it was back to that same old adage, okay, I was drunk, I was high, I don't remember doing any of that, or it was because I was drunk or high. And so this all culminated on January 1st of 1986. And we had gone out to a little place in El Cajon called the Double D Saloon. It was on El Cajon Boulevard, a little redneck, everything you'd think of a redneck bar, this was it. And my wife she was 3 months pregnant at the time. And we were doing flaming shooters and drinking beer and snorting cocaine and smoking weed. And I mean, you name it, and we were doing it. And I got up the next morning, and a friend of mine came over, and I had one joint left from the night before. And we sat there and we smoked that joint. And I told him, I said, man, I can't do this anymore. I said, it's killing me. I just, it's not working anymore. And so that was the last time I smoked any weed. But then I joined the Army in March of that same year. And so that had a lot to do with my drug use when I was after the 1st of January. I joined the Army March that year, went off to basic training, did good in basic training, didn't do spectacular. I passed basic training. I went to my AIT school in Washington, D.C. We were at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. It wasn't a military post. I didn't have drill sergeants. They put us in the barracks room, and one night, the night that my second daughter was born, I went down to the Class 6 store, which is the military equivalent of the liquor store, and bought a 6-pack of Dos Equis. And I was going to hand them out like cigars to all my friends. I got back to the barracks. One of my friends was sitting out on the steps in front of the barracks. I gave him one of those, and I drank the rest of them. And I was off to the races again. And I'm not sure. The book talks about the heavy drinkers. I was definitely a heavy drinker, but there were moments that I could seem to control it, and I kept thinking. I'd always think back to that 7.5 months that I was sober, thinking nobody can quit drinking for 7.5 months, and I always thought I knew what an alcoholic was. My brother was a raging alcoholic. I had an uncle that was an alcoholic, great uncle, and they both died from this disease. And I wasn't like that. I wasn't, I wasn't drinking in the morning without a good reason. I wasn't, I wasn't drinking every day. I was in the military. I was getting promoted. I had a car. I had a family. Everything seemed to be going good. The only problem was my second daughter she was born with congenital heart defect, and she went through several surgeries, and she, let's see, she was 11 months old, and she had just had a cardiac catheterization, and I was standing in the room with the doctor talking to him about the catheterization, and she had a heart attack. And well, I guess it was her heart stopped. And so they got her revived, but she was never the same. She went from a happy, playful, smiling little baby to a vegetable, basically. And so 2 months after that, they tried to do, they replaced the valve, which was one of the problems she had in her heart. And she survived the surgery, but she didn't survive the recovery. And she lived about another 2 weeks. And every time that I would go into her, including the time she had her first heart attack, she would crash. It seemed like it. I couldn't go up there. I'd be up there 5 or 10 minutes, and she'd crash, and they'd have to run me out of the room, bring all the stuff in, and revive her. My wife would go up there, and she'd be fine. Nothing would happen. And so that was the night she passed away. I'd been up there, and she crashed. And I don't know if any of y'all have been around people that are dying, but you know it. You know, if you know, I knew she was dying. And so they run me out of the room, and I was like, I ain't staying up here. I'm just not staying here. And I went home. I was stationed in San Francisco at the time. Any of you been to San Francisco? They got this little street. It's called the California Street. And about every other building they've got, or every other building, they've got a little hole in the wall bar. And I could walk up to California Street from where we were living, and I hit the first one I got. And I don't know how many of them I made it down that night, but I don't remember coming home. I came to the next morning and decided I needed to go back up to the hospital, and I got about halfway to the hospital, and I heard God. You may think I'm crazy, but there was a voice, and the voice told me that I need to go back home and get my wife and take her up there. And we went back up there, and she had passed away during the night. And they had been trying to call us. This was back when you still had the phones, you pick up off the wall, and not these little things here. And they'd been trying to call us, and my oldest daughter had been playing on the phone that night and had taken the phone off and left it off the hook, which was a blessing in disguise, because I would have never known what was going on. And so we dealt with that. I thought we dealt with it. I started drinking pretty heavy after that. Getting more and more into my disease, and I was reassigned to Little Rock Air Force Base. I did a TDY tour down in Honduras for 6 months. They were paying me an ungodly amount of per diem, so I didn't have to be sending any money back to my wife. She was living in base housing. She was getting all my paychecks, all my benefits, everything. The hospital was right there. I didn't have to take care of anything, and I was living off of this per diem. And down there, the wine flowed like water. I mean, cheap beers, 4-day weekends. I've got a picture of me in my barracks room, and there are 3 cases of Budweiser stacked behind me, and all 3 of them are stacked above my head. We had a rum plant there in Tegucigalpa, which was about half an hour down the road. It was wonderful. I was in heaven. Didn't have no responsibilities. Had to show up for work every day, which I did. You go out we do PT first thing in the morning, and everybody smelled like alcohol, so it didn't really matter, that we were all out getting drunk the night before. And I got back to Little Rock, and it all just kind of hit the fan. I didn't slow down my drinking. It was just, I was a person down in Honduras, and I come back and I had no responsibilities. But then again, I was still getting promoted. I hadn't gotten caught for DUI yet. I hadn't gotten in any trouble, and my marriage started to crumble, and we had separated. And one night I was sitting in my barracks room. Um, the woman that understood was over there, and my wife shows up at the door. I don't think I need to go into more detail what happened after that. I finally got her calmed down, got her sent back to the house, got rid of the girlfriend, and started walking over to the club, because that's what I do. You know, that was my solution. That's the only solution I knew, is walking. And I went to the club, and I can remember crying on the way to the club and telling God, I just hit me with a 2x4. Why am I like this? Why am I doing this? And I learned that night to be careful what you pray for. I don't remember coming home. I remember coming to in my barracks room, and I got dressed and went into work and had my first case of DTs. Now, I thought I was having a nervous breakdown because I was having all these problems with my wife. I had to have one of my subordinates take me up to the hospital. They gave me some lithium, I believe it was. I don't know, it was a wonderful drug, whatever it was. But then I ended up in the psych ward in Little Rock, Arkansas, North Little Rock, Arkansas. And they'd taken my belt, they'd taken my shoestrings. I had a plastic mirror. They would issue me a razor to shave with. I was still smoking at the time. They had the little glowworms that we lit cigarettes off of, so they didn't give us any lighters or anything, and I couldn't understand it. They just didn't know who I was. You know, I was an E6 in the Army. I was a leader of leaders and a trainer of trainers, and they just did not understand that. And so I found out about what pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization was, because I tried to leave that place. And when you're in the military, you don't get the choice of whether you're leaving or not. The doctor that put you in there has the choice. Your commander has the choice of whether you're leaving or not, which was another God thing, because I don't think I would have stayed. I tried going out, and the doors were locked, and they were like, "No, David, you can't leave. We're not going to take you out." And so I'd gone into the psychiatrist that admitted me. He wasn't a psychologist, he was a psychiatrist. Came down and was talking to me. They took me off in the little room there. I thought they brainwashed you, you know, but they sit there and talk to you. And he said, "David, are you interested in an inpatient treatment program for alcoholism?" And I thought, "Whoa, no." I felt this little chill go up my spine, because I knew what an alcoholic was, and it wasn't me. And I said, "No, Doc." I said, "You know, if you were married to the woman I was married to, you'd drink like I drank." And guy had dealt with alcoholism before, and I've tried to find him. I can't find him to thank him, but I've tried to look him up. This is back before electronic records, so he's out there. He's a saint in my book, though. But he didn't say nothing. Didn't say a word. Didn't say, "David, you know, you just had your DTs. You're in the psych ward, yada yada yada." Going down this list, he didn't say anything. He said, "Okay." Unbeknownst to me, I was stationed in Little Rock, Arkansas, but my duty was at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. That's where my commander was. And he had left there, called my boss at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and told him he had a soldier with a drinking problem. 3 days after I get out of rehab, or I get out of the psych ward, I'm standing on the carpet in front of my colonel going, "I think that inpatient treatment thing would be a good thing, sir. I probably need to go down there and do that." And so they shipped me off to Shepherd Air Force Base. I went through a 28-day program, still not thinking I was an alcoholic, but I needed something different, that desperation. I needed to try something different. And so we went through all the programs, the group sessions, the meetings, and they'd load us up on a Bluebird bus, take us downtown to meetings. They had 3 meetings in Wichita Falls, and we went to 6 meetings a week. And then on one night, a group carried a message into the treatment facility, and I was probably I know I was in there at least a week. I think it was probably closer to 2 weeks, week and a half, 2 weeks. And I was at a meeting. Two things happened. One, I was at a meeting and I was telling this guy, I was like, I drink a lot. I'm a heavy drinker, but I have moments where I can control it. And he looks at me and he goes, David, normal drinkers don't end up in rehab. And I was like, okay. And so I got on the bus and was headed back to the base. And I was sitting next to an Air Force major. They were getting ready to kick him out. This was his second time through rehab, but they were going to send him through, and then he was getting discharged because of his drinking. And he was unbelievable. I mean, this guy was one of the most serene people I'd seen up to that point. And he says, I says, how do you know you're an alcoholic? And he goes, well, David, he goes, I'd rather not be an alcoholic and admit it than be one and not admit it. And that was my epiphany. That was light. I got the book. We went home, went back to our room, got the book out. We got the other big book out, and we were comparing notes in the two books and talking about starting to get into my spirituality. And that's what I needed. That's what I needed to jumpstart my program. I got back. I was on orders when I went into rehab to go down to San Antonio. I taught at Fort Sam Houston. I sobered up at the Goliad group in San Antonio. It's exactly what I needed. They always said that AA is the last house on the block, and they said the Goliad group was the last house on the AA block, and that's the way it was. A bunch of gutter drunks, a bunch of dipsy dumpster drunks had crawled out and had gotten sober. And so I went in there and I got me a sponsor, started getting into service work, did a lot of service work, kind of went through sponsors. I had a really good sponsor, but he kept going to Utah through the summer to work, and so he'd come back and work, and so it didn't really work out. Like I said, I went through a lot of sponsors. I do have to tell you, the first time that they asked me to speak, I was about 4 months sober. My grand sponsor, which is a term you don't hear too often anymore in the rooms, my grand sponsor asked me to speak 4 months sober, and I thought, wow, they must really like what they see in me, And this was at the Highland Group, and those of you that are familiar with San Antonio, the Highland Group is an old group in San Antonio, one of the first groups, and they have one meeting a week on Wednesday night, and it's a speaker meeting. And they always have people speak that have multiple decades of sobriety. And so I thought, man, he asked me, there were two of us speaking. And so that day I'm sitting at work and I got my big book open. I got my 3x5 cards and I'm looking, oh yeah, that's a good line. And I'm writing it down. And, oh yeah, I need to say that too, And I had all this stuff written down on these 3x5 cards, and I went over to the meeting and I left all those 3x5 cards sitting on my desk at work. So I learned two things that night. I learned one time that you speak from the heart, and I learned that as a person that's been in the room now for a little while, I need that newcomer, I need to listen to the newcomer. I need to go to the meetings where there's newcomers. When there are newcomers in the room, I need to get up and I need to give them my number. I need to talk to them. I need to do for them what that guy did for me. David, normal drinkers don't end up in rehab. That wisdom and passing it on and getting some of that fire that you have when you're in new recovery. And so, but it went pretty well. I was still having a lot of problems at home. Fortunately, my colonel was very, very understanding. I never talked to her about whether she had any alcoholism in her family, but she would let me go to meetings. She made sure I was going to my counseling sessions. I had to go to counseling session once a week. And but I was doing really good, so I thought doing the program, doing a lot of service work, showing up. I think that's probably the only thing I did right. The first 7 years of my sobriety was I was showing up. And there had been a lot of damage done in my first marriage, and so that didn't last. And we separated and divorced right before I came down on orders to go to Marine Corps Air Station Iwakuni in Japan. And I went over there. I was fortunate. I got to take my daughters with me. My daughters weren't so fortunate because my daughters have never ever seen me drunk, but they've seen me in recovery. And you all know early recovery. And sometimes it wasn't pretty. And so I don't know which was worse, is my early recovery or me being drunk. But I'd much rather the way they are today, and they grew up in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Like I said, my youngest daughter has been involved in Al-Anon for a long time. My oldest daughter, she's, I really don't think she's an alcoholic, but she used to say she liked going to Al-Anon because she could still drink when she was out in Al-Anon. But she doesn't. She really doesn't have a problem that I think. But you know, that's for her to decide, not for me. But we were in Japan, and I always thought I needed somebody. I always thought I needed a woman. I needed somebody in my life to complete me, you know. And I kept trying and trying. I got hooked up with this mean little Filipino woman, and I'm not saying all Filipino women are mean, but she was exceptional, and she threatened to stab me one night. So I slept with my door locked in the bedroom about a week. She slept out on the couch, but it just wasn't good. My daughters moved back to San Diego with their mother. She had run them off, and finally it just came to, I sent her to, she got her green card and went to Florida to live with her sister, and I filed papers for divorce. But during all of this time, after she had left, I was alone. It was the first time I'd been sober, and I was alone, and I was miserable, and it just wasn't working. And I was doing all the things that I was supposed to be doing, so I thought, and it just wasn't working. The program wasn't working in my life. And finally it came to a head one night, and like I said, the only thing I think I did right was showing up. And I showed up at a meeting that night, didn't share. It was a small meeting. We only had 5 or 6 people there. Didn't share with, I was out of there. They had a new staff NCO club on post, and I hadn't been to it, and I was going there that night. And so we did the Our Father, shook the hands, and boom, I made a beeline for that door, and I got just about to that door frame, and I felt this hand on my shoulder, and he whipped me around, and it was one of my friends there. He'd been sober for a while, but he was kind of my I never officially made him my sponsor, but he was my sponsor, and he says, "David, what's wrong?" And I gave him the standard dry drunk answer. I'm fine. And he come back with a reply, basically what comes out of the south end of a northbound bull. And he says, he goes, "No, you're not." I said, "Yes, sir." "No, you're not." He goes, "What's wrong?" And so it broke, the dam broke. And we went down to the food court, got some coffee. We went to the third step again. I think the third step is the most powerful prayer in the big book Alcoholics Anonymous. I think it's the most powerful prayer in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And saved my life. I truly, truly believe he saved my life that night. And I also believe that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And so I got back into the program. I was leading meetings. Tom had PC. He actually had retired and moved back to the States, but I was doing okay. I was back to dealing with newcomers, working with newcomers. Those of you know that's how we do that program, or this program. And so um, I was looking for an assignment coming back to the States. I wanted to get someplace close to my daughters in San Diego. And so there's an opening in Hawaii, and I contacted the sergeant major in Hawaii, and didn't get promoted. I was still E6. I got promoted to E7 while I was in Japan, but it was an E7 position, and I didn't get promoted in time, and they had put somebody against that assignment. And so I went and talked to my first sergeant, and he says, "Well, David," he goes, "let's look at the C10, and we'll see where the openings." And that's the C10 is what the Army uses for all the positions of my job title and my rank. And we looked at it, and there was a position open in Seattle at Fort Lewis, and I thought that would be great because I can catch hops between LA and Seattle, and I could pretty much visit my daughters anytime I wanted to. And so we thought, okay, let's do that. And so I called the sergeant major at Fort Lewis, and she goes, Sergeant Disselhorst, she goes, "We just filled that spot with somebody, but I got an opening in San Diego. Would you like to go to San Diego?" Let me think about that, Sergeant. Yes. So, and this is stuff that's happened. This stuff happens in my life. Since I turned my life over, truly turned my life over to my higher power, who I choose to call God today, a loving God. This stuff happens all the time, and so I went to San Diego, got to be with my daughters, got to watch them graduate from high school. My youngest daughter, that's in Al-Anon, she had some learning disabilities, and I got to work with her and get her squared away and get things for her, watch her progress. I got to do all of this stuff with her, and so I'm coming up on the end of my tour. I'm getting close to retirement. I'm at a conference in Tucson, and my first sergeant calls me and says, "Hey, you're on orders to go to Germany." And I said, "Hey, no, I'm not. I've got, it's usually a 10, 11 month period, transition period, getting all your stuff together, your passports, your family stuff, your family passports, all that stuff together to go to overseas." And I said, "No, I'm going to drop my retirement papers." And I was from November to March from dropping my retirement papers and being able to turn down that assignment. He says, "No, it's a short notice tour. You got 3 months." And so I didn't want to go to Germany. I didn't want to go to the beer capital of the world. I love drinking beer. I just, you know. And so he says, "You're going?" And it's like, "Oh, okay." So, at this point in my sobriety, and it's one of the wonderful things about sobriety, when something like that happens, God's telling you, okay, you got to do this, you need to go. And so, I accepted it. And so, I got my stuff together. My youngest daughter decided to go with me. But in the meantime, I had met this crazy little woman. I used to go to the Lakeside Hotel in Lakeside, California for my meetings. And it was this old biker bar. Biker, cowboy / Mexican, if you go up to the door and they ask you if you had a knife or a gun, and they'd say no, and they go, "Okay, we'll pick one out here so you have one to go in with." And they had chicken wire across the stage for the band, and it was amazing. A quick sidebar here. I was down in Pattaya Beach, Thailand, doing a TDY, and I'd gone to a meeting, and I was sharing this at a meeting about the Lakeside Hotel, and somebody come up to me after the meeting and said, "You mean they turned the Lakeside Hotel into a halfway house?" I said, "Yeah." So it had a pretty good reputation. Carried all the way to Thailand, but they had made the dance floor the meeting room. They'd taken the upstairs apartments and made them into a halfway house, and they had a dry bar. Had a beautiful, beautiful old bar in there. And there's this crazy little woman working the dry bar. I got to tell a little bit of her story. I've talked to her. She's okayed this. So you can kind of understand. My wife's a miracle. She is a bona fide miracle. Um, she had no hair on her body, no eyebrows, no fingernails, not even her little mustache that she has today. So, so she had this great big bruise on her chest from radiation, and she had this, call it fire and ice wig on, and it come down about her shoulders. It was kind of a grayish brown and had little pink highlights in it. And we just hit it off. I mean, we didn't start dating. I was still under that impression that I had to go through. I had to find me somebody, that just to complete me. But that teacher I told you about, when the student's ready, that teacher showed up in San Diego, and his name was Roland. And Roland was a dumpster drunk. He'd crawled out of the dumpster and gotten sober. And so me and Roland worked through the steps, and we worked through. I realized that I had always been working David's program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I hadn't been working the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and there is a difference. And once I started working the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, my life changed. And Roland was the kind of guy, he had 20 years of sobriety, and he was getting ready to celebrate his 18th wedding anniversary. And when he said that at the first meeting I met Roland at, he said that. And that's what I wanted. I wanted a long-term relationship. I wanted long-term sobriety. And so I asked him to be my sponsor, and he did. And he didn't take no gruff off of me. He was, like I said, he was an old dumpster drunk, and he took this program seriously. And we walked through the steps, and I know that I was working them right because up to that time, I'd always felt around my anniversary time, I always felt like I had to work the steps. I had to work the steps again. And so I would work the steps around my anniversary. And once we had walked through there and worked the steps, I've never felt like I've had to do that again. I still do it. I still work steps. I don't do it a regiment like the book does. But I do work with newcomers, work the steps with them, and there are steps. I do the 3rd step, 7 steps prayer every day. I can't be in God's grace if I don't ask Him. And so he walked me through this. He's the kind of guy that he said, we were sitting out one day, and he goes, David, he goes, I probably only need, I don't know, 1 meeting a week or so. And I took that and I said, Roland, I said, you go to 4 or 5 meetings a week. Why do you do 4 or 5 meetings a week if you only need 1 meeting? And he goes, well, David, he goes, I never know which meeting it's going to be. And so, and that's kind of the mindset that I'd gotten into. But anyway, he was a great man. He saved my life. There's several people in this program that have gotten that. Well, he was working with me on my relationship problems, and we had, I like them crazy. I like them, the crazier the better, seems like. And I just broke it off with this one woman, and I would cry into him, and he's and he said, well, did you do this? And I said, well, yes, Roland. He goes, well, were you doing that? Yes, but I'm not looking. I'm just trying to find a woman, and he goes, David, you're looking. Shut up. Go back, do step 3. And we worked through it, and I'm sitting in my house one night. I got my old dog Hercules sitting on the couch next to me watching the TV, and I realized I was comfortable in my own skin. I was where I needed to be. I was finally that the sunlight of the Spirit. I love the thing for today, but like I said, met this crazy little woman, and she had worked as a prison guard in the yard, not in admin or anything like that. She was down in the yard with the prisoners. Series of events, and she got violently attacked by a prisoner. She survived that, had some mental problems, and then she was, in 2004, she was diagnosed with stage 4 inflammatory breast cancer. And they told her with 6 months of intensive chemotherapy and radiation, she'd live another 6 months. This was in 2004. In 2014, she was diagnosed cancer-free. So she is my miracle. My pain in the butt miracle sometimes, but she is my miracle. But of course, I'm a saint, so she doesn't have any problems with me. But we started talking. We started hanging out together. I had asked her out, and she finally accepted. We went over to this little Mexican restaurant, and I went and opened the door, let her out of there. And before she got out of the van, she looks at me and she goes, "David, how old are you?" There's a little bit of an age difference between us, but not too bad. And so we went from there, and I've watched her walk through some stuff. She's had she had mental problems from this. She has side effects from all the chemo and radiation she's done, and she's walked through this, and she has been a blessing, because just like working with the newcomers, I've seen her do what she needs to do, and she's encouraged me to keep doing what I need to do to stay in the program, to stay in the solution. That's what my friend used to always say, the one that grabbed me and stopped me from going out drinking in Japan. He'd say, "David, don't bring me your problems, bring me your solutions." And, I work on that today. But one of the things that did happen, we were dating when I went to Germany. And she'd come over to Germany to visit. I proposed. As usual, I do things backwards. We went on our honeymoon and then got married. But before I went over to Germany, I'd called my mom, told her I was on orders. She goes, "Well, you're stopping by Missouri first before you go." And I said, "Well, no, Mom, I'm just flying straight from San Diego." And her voice just dropped. And it was one of those things, God telling me, you got to go home, got to go see your mom. And so I went home, or I went back the next day. I talked to them to travel, and they arranged it so that I flew from San Diego to St. Louis to Germany. And when I was 6 months sober, my first Christmas, I was 6 months sober, and I'd gone back to Palmyra. That's where my mom and dad lived, too, for Christmas. And I was on a colonel slip. Most of you guys are on a judge slip. I was on a colonel slip. I'd do 5 meetings a week for a year. And my colonel looked at it. And so I would go in and take it to him. And so I get back to my mom's. I call the local AA, and they tell me, "Oh, the closest meeting's over in Springfield, Illinois," which is about an hour and a half from where my mom and dad live. And I'm just devastated. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, how am I going to do 5 meetings a week, driving an hour and a half one way?" So I'm sitting there at the table pouting, and I'm a professional pouter. And my mom walks in. She asked me what's wrong, and I explained it to her and what was going on. She goes, "Well, you know what? Let me call Bill B here in Palmyra. He does a lot with Alcoholics Anonymous here in Palmyra. See if there's any meetings local." They had 6 meetings in 7 days. This is a town about 4,000 people, maybe, on a good day. I went to the morning, the 29th of December, I picked up my 6-month chip. There were 5 of us sitting in the room, and I just had my little 6 months. And between those 4, there was 50 years of sobriety in the room. That's what God does for me. And so, but I had gone home with the intention of seeing my mom. And Bill was kind of my go-to sponsor when I was home visiting. And I went up to the meeting, and he had a chair. Bob has a chair over there at the Lubbock group. If that chair is empty, you always wonder what's wrong with Bob. And so he was kind of the same way with Bill. And one of my friends said, "Dave, you haven't heard?" And my mom hadn't told me he was in hospice. And so, every time I talk about this, I'm under the old school impression that real men don't cry. So I'm not going to apologize for crying. I got to go see him before I went, and if I hadn't have listened to my higher power, I wouldn't have got to see him. And I got to go down to the hospital in Columbia. Sat in his room for probably 2 hours, and we laughed and joked and told stories about my grandpa. That's how I knew my grandpa drank a little bit more than what he did, because Bill drank with my grandpa. And he would tell me stories, and like I said, it was just, I was at peace. You know, that sense of what the promise is. You know, we'll comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. And so we went to Germany. We did a lot of traveling in Germany. Joyce came over there. We were living together. We were working through, we had a really, really good group over there. She's working her program, I'm working her program, and the most important thing about that is we were not sponsoring each other. I did not tell her how to work her program, and she did not tell me how to work my program. We still do that today. And, you know, she gets out and goes to meetings. She has a little more opportunity. She's retired today. Wanted to retire this year, but just didn't work out. But we came back, and we've traveled a little bit. I teach, and so I've always have tried to improve on it, and sometimes I have and sometimes I haven't on where I go to teach. And we ended up, we'd always moved around, and mostly in Texas. I did a little tour in Arizona, but we'd come back to Texas, and that's where I met Mike. And we had always thought, man, if we ever end up in Midland or Odessa, we have hit the bottom of the barrel. You know? And lo and behold, I got a job at Greenwood High School just outside of Midland, Texas, and we moved to Stanton. And I have apologized profusely to the people of Midland and people of Odessa every time I get up on the podium, because they have some of the best sobriety that we've had in my almost 30 years of sobriety. And it was really, really sad to leave that place down there. We were down there for 4 years. Still know a lot of people, still go down to the winter conference. And so, but we moved up here to Rawls, and we found a great little house. We found these two guys and have this little meeting over in Lorenzo, and started going to the Lorenzo group. And one of the things that I found in my sobriety is that I've come back to my faith. And you know, I told you guys that I'm a cradle Catholic, and I practice my faith today, and I'd gotten away from that. And I know you hear the word religion and we all kind of cringe, but you know, doing that, the book talks about being rocketed into a fourth dimension. I feel like I've been rocketed into a fifth dimension, and that these things work hand in hand. I truly believe that I was prayed into the program. I'm not sure it was. I think my mother was the guilty party, but I truly believe I was prayed into the program. The program brought me back to a God of my understanding. The God of my understanding brought me back to my faith. And today they work hand in hand with each other. And I see the program of Alcoholics Anonymous in my faith, and I see my faith in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And you know, I still work with newcomers, still try to get as many meetings as I can. And that thing that I wanted when I had met Roland, I've got 29 years, 10 months, and 17 days. And on 5th of May, Cinco de Mayo, me and my wife celebrated 19 years of sobriety. The program of Alcoholics. This is what the program of Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me. Huh? Mary, oh yeah. I'm sorry, I get a little emotional. I love my wife to death. Like I said, she is my miracle. She keeps me focused. She keeps me grounded. She follows me around. She spoils me rotten. I have this magic clothes hamper at home. I just throw my dirty clothes in it, and they appear folded on my bed the next day. It's wonderful. But yeah, I have 29 plus years of sobriety and 19 years of marriage, and that's what I've seen in Roland, and that's what I wanted, and that's what the program has done for me and countless others like me. And like I said, the strongest prayer I feel in the big book in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is the third step prayer, because it relieved me of the bondage of self. It has truly set me free. It let me forgive. You know, I used to think I would never ever forgive me for taking my wife out that January while she was pregnant and doing all those drugs and drinking all that alcohol. I don't know if it affected my daughter or not, or she had. I have heart problems running my family. I don't know if it was that or if it was all the alcohol. I was the victim for a long time, thinking it was all the alcohol, and if I hadn't taken her out there, I wouldn't have lost that second child. And I thought I would never, ever be able to forgive myself. My brother did some things to me, and I never thought I'd be able to ever forgive him. And by getting relieved of the bondage of myself, I have gotten a new freedom. I've gotten the ability to forgive anything. I do not think today that there is anything that is unforgivable. I believe if God can forgive me for what I have done, I can forgive people for what they've done. And this is too where my faith has come back into my life. And I comprehend the word serenity. I do know peace today. And for the most part, I'm happy, joyous, and free. And I'll end with what my grand sponsor used to end his speeches is that I love each and every one of you, and there ain't a damn thing you can do about it. Thank you for letting me share it.